All right, hey, what's up, guys? We have Brian Moretz here. He is a self-defense expert. Hey, Brian, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sir. I've been in the martial arts and self-defense industry for about 23 years now, actually. So, been doing this for a really long time. Uh, I teach regular martial arts classes, and then I teach a lot of abduction prevention, firearms classes, just straight self-defense classes, all of that kind of stuff too. We train security teams. I train our local law enforcement sometimes when some of them need some help with some things here and there. So yeah, I stay pretty busy with all that.
Okay, cool. And how did you get into self-defense?
So for me, it was kind of a process. Um, as a kid, I was always like really obsessed with martial arts. I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I was raised in the 80s and 90s. So, the Karate Kid and everything else that was out there at the time. I thought this stuff was the coolest stuff in the world. And my mom, she tried to get me enrolled in something, and apparently the guy scared her to death. So she backed off and never did anything. Well, I got married to my wife. I was 19 years old. We got married. And like a month later, I was like, I think I want to go try this martial arts stuff, if that's cool with you. And so I started a month after I got married, which I don't necessarily suggest is a great time to start a whole new thing, a month after marriage. But uh, so I started out like traditional martial arts. We eventually led me to fighting. So I fought some mixed martial arts for a while. Enjoyed that. But I was also, by that time, my father had a full-time business. I had a full-time job and I had a business. So I was like, well, maybe it's time I should not do that. And for some crazy reason, my wife didn't, enjoy watching her husband jump into the cage and fight another dude. Uh, After that, uh, moved out of that, kind of retired from fighting and moved into the self-defense and kind of reality-based type stuff. And that led to firearms and everything else. So
Okay, so you actually were doing fighting with like MMA or
yeah,
karate? Oh, MMA stuff.
yeah. So I fought MMA for a while.
Okay. And how old were you? You said it was right after you got married.
I started martial arts training like at 19, right after I got married. Uh, I
Okay.
didn't I didn't fight for a while, but I fought once I started fighting. I fought till I was right at almost 30 years old. I stopped when I was 29, about to turn 30.
Okay. And how was your career in MMA? Was it pretty good?
Yeah, I,
I know nothing about the world, so you could be a famous MMA fighter and I wouldn't even know, you know what I mean?
no, I had some guys that were really high on me. I fought North Carolina. It was illegal in North Carolina for a long time. They just, I don't know why they didn't like it in North Carolina, and that's where I'm from. So I fought in some what they call smokers, which are unsanctioned fights for a while. I did well. I fought in North Carolina, Virginia, and then I moved up once it became legal. I got picked up by a bigger show here in North Carolina. I fought several times for them. I had offers. I never did leave the amateur circuit. I did go undefeated as an amateur. Um, I had some offers to go fight in some other states. I actually had an offer to go fight in Japan, um, and I had an offer to fight actually professional boxing here in North Carolina. Um, and that was that point where I was like, okay, I gotta make a choice. I either need to go for this whole fighting thing and I could really go after it, or kind of just follow the business and you know talk about some other things, focus on teaching, and looking around. Like I said, I had a full-time job, I had my business, I had my wife, I had my child. It's like maybe it's time I just kind of focus on. And it also helped that I was about to turn 30, and I was like, how long of a fight career could I really have as a professional? So
Yeah. And so how old are you now?
I'm 42 now.
Okay. So yeah, that's like one big question that people are talking about, right? Is how long can you go before you potentially get like brain damage or whatever, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
a, a lot of the guys are getting hurt pretty badly. Did you ever get hurt pretty badly?
No, not really. I had a broken nose, I guess. I've had a couple broken noses, but outside of that, nothing really too bad.
Okay. And did you fight anyone that I would know of? Any big names?
No, probably not. It was like I said, I never left the amateur circuit. So I fought some guys that were kind of bigger locally, but nothing that anybody would really know.
Okay. And was it pretty good money while you were doing it? Like, was it like your full-time gig?
No. Like I said, I never went professional.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, as an amateur, you don't make any money.
Okay. So it's more just kind of for fun.
Yeah. You're paying to do it. I guess I made there was like some of the shows I fought on, you would get like a percentage of the tickets you sold. So like, hey, come out. I guess I made a little money off of that. Basically enough to pay my my medical because you have to go through all the medical prep stuff and licensing fees and stuff like that. So I made all that money back. And sponsorships. So I made some money on sponsorships too, but it wasn't anything like a full-time career.
Okay.
Like I said, I had the opportunity, but yeah, I just decided not to.
Okay. And like what weight? They have weight classes for that, right?
Oh yeah. I fought.
What weight class were you in?
So the first time I fought in a it was kind of odd. It was weird. It's way back in the day, and they said everything 185 pounds was heavyweight. Most of the time, so I normally would fight around 185, and then I dropped down. I fought at 170. That was kind of the best place I was at. But I did go to one where they said everything above 185 is heavyweight. I go up there. This is a state away. I jumped on the scales. Well, I weighed in at like 186 or a tad over 186. And usually you have like, okay, we'll come back in an hour. You got an hour to go sweat that extra pound off or something like that. And they weren't like that. They were like, all right, you're a heavyweight. I was like, what? So I did have to fight one fight as a heavyweight. Most of the time I say middleweight, welterweight, somewhere in that range.
Okay. And how high up does it go? Like what's the weight levels? Like the lowest to the highest?
Now there's a lot more. Back when I fought, and it depended on what organization and everything, because like I said, it wasn't as regulated as it is now. But we had like 155s for lightweights, 170 at welterweight, 185 was middleweight, 205 was light heavyweight, and then up to 265 was your heavyweights, and then beyond that was like what they call super heavyweights.
Okay. And but yeah, I think I'm like 250, and I don't feel 250, but when I weigh myself, I'm like, oh wow, which people will be like, man, I'm 180 or whatever, 200. I'm a big boy, and I'm like, man, I'm 250. Damn.
Yeah, I'm a lot bigger now than I used to be. And actually it's funny because talking to so I used to work out with a lot of guys that fought in some of the bigger shows. I worked out with a couple of guys that fought in UFC. And I know one of the guys told me, he says, as soon as I retire, he said, my whole goal in life is to get fat. He said, I'm tired of like cutting weight and constantly watching that every time. He said, I just want to be so fat.
Yeah. So. Well, in terms of that, it's kind of like a weird thing because I don't really know too much about the world, but it's almost kind of better to be, well, I guess it depends. It's better to be bigger to be a fighter, but then it also punches you up to that higher weight class. So I don't know. Like, do you look at it as you're better off in that world being like a bigger guy or almost like a smaller guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was nice to have a size advantage. I didn't have a size advantage too many times. When I fought at 185, I was always a smaller guy. And so after a lot of thinking about it, talking with my trainers and stuff, and I thought the best idea would be to drop to 170. Fighting at 170 was guys my size. And I would walk around between 195 and 205. And that was my walking around weight. And then I would cut my weight down to 170 and fight at 170. Well,
okay.
I would weigh in at 170 and then come back in usually between 185 and 190 by fight time.
Was it pretty hard to cut that weight? How long of time?
It sucks.
Yeah. What's the time period to cut it?
I would cut from 195 to 170 in about a week.
Oh damn.
Yeah, dude, it's horrible. It's horrible.
So you were just like starving yourself basically?
No, it's really more dehydrating. So it was weird. So what the method we used, which was nice, and once we kind of got it down, it wasn't horrible. I just had to be super, super strict. I would eat like tuna. I hate tuna, but I would eat like tuna on lettuce with like olive oil and vinegar as a dressing. And that was it. And that was what I ate. So, and I eat like a grilled chicken, just a grilled chicken breast, just like no flavoring, no nothing on it. And I had the very same thing every single day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for that week. My like 1 week out, I would drink 2 gallons of water. The next day, I would drink 1.5 gallons. Then I would drink 1 gallon, and working it way down until like the last 24 hours, you have nothing to drink, but you're peeing constantly. So you're just trying to get rid of all that weight. So it was really a dehydration process. It's wild. And then you have to go sit in the sauna and sweat out the last few pounds.
Which is probably kind of it's unhealthy, right?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. And I tell everybody,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it ruined my metabolism. I didn't have a great metabolism to begin with, to be honest with you, but I think that definitely ruined it. Yeah.
And you can't even drink water. But doesn't water like it's no calories? Like it doesn't really do anything, right?
Yeah. I mean, like the last 24 hours before your weigh in, we were not allowed to drink any water whatsoever. Because you're just trying to dehydrate yourself down, and you're spitting, you're chewing gum, you're like spitting into a cup and everything. It's terrible.
Yeah. And you mentioned that when you first started, it was illegal in North Carolina. Is it legal everywhere, or is there certain states where it's still illegal?
I'm not positive, but I think it's pretty much legal in all, if not all 50 states. It's right at all 50 states.
Okay. And it's kind of, I don't know how big it was back then when you were doing it, but it's kind of turned into like a really massive thing now, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Used to, I was following UFC. I was watching every single event all the time. And then, I kept watching it all the way up to like the point where they were getting, it was like every month there was an event. I was still there. I was still watching every event. Now at the point, there's like 1 to 2 shows every single week. And it's like, I can't keep up with it anymore. It's so huge. You just can't keep up with it like once good.
Yeah. Do you go to a lot of the fights still, or?
No, not a whole lot. Every once in a while I have a friend or a student that wants to fight, or a friend who just wants me to come out, that I'll go out to, but I haven't been to a show. I definitely haven't been to a show since before COVID. So.
Okay. And who are the big names now that either you like or just in general? Who are some of the guys that you like now?
That's the problem, man. Anymore. I've been so wrapped up now in like the reality-based self-defense stuff that I haven't kept up with it like I once could. And I honestly, I don't even know who's champion now in most divisions. And it's just because every great once in a while I will sit down and say like, okay, let's watch a fight, but it's very rare anymore.
Yeah. And do you think that if you had kept doing it, do you think eventually you could have made money off of it, or do you think you probably would have just stayed in the amateur level?
Well, no, I mean, like I said, when I made that choice, I was kind of sitting at a fork in the road. It was either go pro. I had, so I had an offer to go fight in Japan. That one was for money. I had an offer to go to a larger MMA show in the Midwest. They offered to fly me out and to and pay me to fight, to go to pro out there. I had an offer to fight professional boxing here in North Carolina. And I also had an offer to drive to, it was somewhere, I don't remember if it was Virginia or if it was Maryland or somewhere. They wanted to offer me like an amateur championship. I would not have taken that because it was, even like I trained with a couple guys, and like there was a manager that was hanging around the gym quite a bit. There was another dude's manager, and he thought I was going to go places if I really wanted to. And then there was a guy I was training with periodically that was fighting in the UFC at the time as a lightweight. And he told me, he says, you need to go pro. So, I mean, I could have done, I don't know how far I could have gone in the sport. There was definitely some guys around me that thought I could have gone pretty far, but again, it was kind of a choice over family and time with family. The life of a fighter is a very, very selfish life. Because you've got to, if you don't have that focus on everything that you're doing, man, it's just, you're going to get messed up and you're definitely not going to win.
Yeah, and they say a lot of the guys too, because of the brain damage or whatever, kind of end up being like extremely like impulsive or whatever, and
Yeah.
like I think I've heard Joe Rogan talk about that, where
Yeah.
the fighters just become kind of like, you just become kind of crazy after a while.
Yeah. And I think, and honestly, I think a lot of that kind of happens a little more in boxing than it does mixed martial arts.
Yeah, I think
Because
he
you're
is
not
talking
taking,
about boxing. Yeah.
yeah, you don't take as much damage straight to the head as you do in boxing, and also in boxing and kickboxing too. Both of those, you're allowed to get hit in the head. You're dropped to the ground. You given an 8 count, and then you can hop back up and then jump back in. Well, your brain is already concussed at that point in time, and now what they're doing is just adding in extra injury to your brain after you've already been injured. At least with MMA, you get hit, you're dropped, the guy jumps on top of you and he punching you, and it looks worse, but in all actuality, for the health of your brain, that's a whole lot better. I mean, guys go on in MMA and fight a lot longer most of the time than they do in something like boxing.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on like someone like Joe Rogan? Like, are you a Joe Rogan podcast listener? Do you like him? Or
I like Joe Rogan. The thing about his podcast, like 3 freaking hours long. So I usually catch the clips.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I've kind of gotten to the point with those long ones where it's like, okay, I'll listen to like an hour or so, and then at that point I'll check out or stick in. And some of them are worth the 3 hours, but most of them I just can't do that long. And
yeah, I'm kind of picky and choosy with my podcast anymore. So if one comes through, he's got a guest on that I really want to hear from, and I'll listen to it. I catch a lot of his clips though.
Yeah. Overall, he's probably good for the sport though, I would imagine, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he is a MMA commentator, right? Does he do boxing too, or is it just MMA?
No, as far as I know, it's just MMA.
Okay. And then what are your thoughts on like the Paul brothers getting into boxing? Like, that's also probably good for the sport, right?
It is good for the sport. I agree that it is. There's something about them that really, really get on my nerves. I don't really know a whole lot about them. I've actually never watched either one of them on YouTube. But there's just something about them that gets on my nerves that is, I guess I'm that person that just wants to see them get knocked out, when they jump in there. But this, I don't know.
And the last one, I think, didn't Jake Paul beat, was it Anderson Silva that he fought? I want to say he beat him.
I am not sure.
I'd have to look it up, but I think the most recent one, but once again, I don't know anything about this, so I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. But
honestly, I didn't think that they had fought yet, but I could be completely wrong.
Okay, I could be wrong. For some reason, I thought I heard that he beat him.
He might have. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. But so moving forward, now you've kind of gotten out of that world and you're more into the you call it like virtual safety. Is that what you said it was?
No, it's reality based self-defense.
Oh, okay, sorry, reality.
And,
yeah,
and reason the difference in what you would get out of like a normal traditional kind of martial arts school and someone who actually does like reality based self-defense or combatives or anything along those lines is it's real world tested stuff. So like, and I mean, I say this as someone who come out of a traditional martial arts kind of background. I started off, I was like, oh, cool, karate, let me go do that. So that's where I got my start. Now it was a decent style. It was a full contact style, but still yet, you had a lot of that kind of stuff that just in reality, the self-defense that was taught didn't really work. So I started like training with these guys that were, these different guys that do like a lot of stuff where it's pressure tested and it's really, really worked on. So that, and I'm not trying to just trash on like traditional martial arts, but a lot of the stuff that they teach just doesn't really work in real world, self-defense.
Yeah, I've never really seen somebody get into like a karate match like in the street.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff are you doing now that's more like real world type stuff? Like, so what does that entail?
I mean, it's going to be, I guess there's a little bit different everybody, but for one thing, we teach to avoid this situation if at all costs. I mean, any chance you want to avoid, because if you can avoid the situation, that it's going to be a whole lot better. We're going to teach you to get out of there if you can. Sometimes you're trying to fight to get out of there. But if it really does come to a real serious situation, then, the techniques are a little different. It's not as formal. There's not as much space. It's usually in really close. We pull a lot of our stuff from like Greco-Roman type wrestling, where it's really close and upper body clenching type stuff. So you're going to have, because if you watch almost every altercation that happens, what happens is these two dudes like go and they just grab each other and start punching and everything. If you can learn to control that space right there, you're going to have a much better chance of actually walking out of there. So that's kind of the goal is what can actually be done. And then we pressure test everything. We put it to the test. It goes start ramping up when somebody's trying to kind of fight back against you, and allow you to work through that and find out what really works for you and what doesn't. Because unfortunately, not every single technique is going to work for every single person.
Okay. Yeah. And how often have you gotten into like a real world type fight situation? Does it happen a lot with you, or have you gotten into any real fights?
Yeah, I get asked all the time. So like, you do this, like how many fights have you been in? I've been in a lot of fights, a whole lot of fights. They've all been in the ring or a cage. Because one of the things that we do, and I thank God this was one my instructor did. And I thank God for it, because honestly, I felt completely and totally ridiculous when we did this, but talking about verbal diffusing a situation, trying to de-escalate a situation. And I have been in a couple of situations, a job that I used to have. One of the things that we would do was if somebody stole from this particular store that I worked for, we would follow them. And we wouldn't go out there. We were not allowed to like put our hands on them or anything like that, but we would follow them. And then, so we would know where they went when the police showed up. So there they are, kind of thing. So there was a situation where I'd been at lunch. I come back, a coworker of mine had followed somebody, and I pull up, man, police are around. It was this bad situation. And boss lady looks at me and she says, "You need to go find your coworker." And so I drive off. I said, "Where'd he go?" She said, "He went that way." I mean, she didn't know. She just knew he went that way. So I go up to an intersection. I didn't know which way to go, and I just went straight across. Pull down a little hill, and there he was out in someone's front yard with these two dudes. And I didn't know what was going on. I get out of my vehicle. And as soon as I get out of the vehicle, these two guys are sitting there. They're saying, "We're going to tear your effing head off," and all this stuff. I can't, man, I couldn't. I've never been spoke to the way I was spoke to since I got out of my vehicle. And I just like kicked right into that training of the verbal de-escalation. And I went straight into like, hey, well, let's calm down a second. And a lot of it is how you posture your body. A lot of it's how you speak to someone. I want my palms to face them. I could hit somebody probably from this position if I wanted to, but so this is a defensive position, but body language, it tells you that you don't want to fight. You try to tell you to calm down. It might tell you to stay back a little bit, but I'm sitting there going like, hey, let's calm down a minute. Come to find out, the dude that my coworker had been following goes right past this person's house. They come out, these two guys come out and threatening everything else. So at the end of the day, they all knew each other. The two guys that we had talked about were actually wanted in West Virginia for some crap. So it was a very interesting end of the day. But, I was able to kind of calm the situation down, talk those guys down, get my friend in the vehicle, and me hop in and us drive all away safely. I've been in a few situations like that, partially because of the job that I used to have. So every time so far, I have been able to either avoid or diffuse, and that's the goal.
Yeah, I think they say that's the goal of like a military guy too, right? Is like when they come back, they don't want them fighting. They want them to stop the fights. Yeah, that's the whole goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Yeah. And same thing I know with self-defense stuff like karate or anything else. The whole goal is to stop the fight, not start the fight, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So were you at those jobs, you were a worker there? You were like a what do they call that? Like a security guard type, or what was your position there?
My position actually had nothing to do with that at the time. I just worked, but I just happened to be one of the guys that also would be caught on in a situation like that.
Okay. So they just
Yeah.
kind of like knew you could handle it if somebody stole
Yeah.
it, they'd send you after them. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in any kind of crazy situations in like bar brawls type stuff or parties or anything where things got out of control and you had to kind of soften it or try and stop it?
No, I have been. I was in a position. My brother does a lot of. He's martial artist as well. He's done a lot of different things as well. We were somewhere and were asked to break a fight up. Nothing we were directly involved in, but kind of having to jump in and kind of break up a situation. One of the things that we generally say within our business is we have the DDSS rule: don't do stupid stuff. So if you can avoid doing stupid things with stupid people at stupid times and stupid places, then you're probably going to be safe. And one of those things is if you're at a bar at 3 a.m., somewhere, and running your mouth and doing stupid things, you're probably going to be, have to deal with a situation like that. But if you can avoid places like that and things like that, you're probably going to be okay. But yeah, been in this situation, like I said, with my brother. Somebody comes up and says, "Hey, we know you guys know what you're doing. Can you please go break these guys up?" So, I've had to do that a couple of times.
Yeah, and your full-time job is running this. What exactly do you call it? Like real world self-defense, or?
Yeah. So full time right now, what we do is we teach martial arts to like kids and adults, and then we go out and we teach reality-based self-defense seminars. We're teaching abduction prevention. We teach that to kids. We teach that to teens. We teach that to women. We teach concealed carry. We also teach defensive firearms. We teach home defense classes. We teach CPR and stop the bleed classes. We teach security. I would go around teaching and training security teams. We'll travel. I travel anywhere, North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina. We're teaching security teams and different things like that. So we've taught active shooter to security in Virginia and South Carolina. So yeah, we do a lot of different things along those lines.
And it's you own the company, right?
Yes,
your
sir.
company. Yeah,
yes,
cool.
Sir.
And then you also have the podcast too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
is that kind of like I'm curious for myself, like, is that the type of thing that like pays money to, or do you just do that kind of like more for fun and just like get the word out there?
So yeah, we do that kind of to keep the word out there, but just we wanted to put something out that was going to help people just kind of live safer. And so we just crossed over 100 episodes. Actually, our 102, I think, just dropped. And the whole thing about that podcast is just to kind of give people information that you can relay over podcast. So kind of more the mental side of self-defense, or just things that we can do without. So when this is how you block a punch, or this is how, along those lines, the things that you can just explain to people. That's what we kind of use the podcast for. And it's become fun. It's just something we enjoy doing. I don't think we have yet to make a penny off of it. We've made money, but every bit of money we've had, we've turned it around and put it back into the podcast. So,
yeah, I honestly liked I listened to a little bit before, and I noticed you guys have like 69 reviews, and it's a 5 out of 5 on Apple Podcasts. And so, and not only that, but I listened to a little bit. It does. I like how it sounds. Like your voice sounds good, and you guys have a good setup there. I think you had some girls on it too with you, right? On the last one I listened to.
So on the podcast, the general people on the podcast is me. It is a girl that works for us, and then my daughter, who is 15, and it gives a very interesting, because I'm the grouchy old man, and then there is an adult 20 something young woman, and then there is a 15-year-old girl. So you get kind of different perspectives on some things and everything as well. And honestly, we just kind of enjoy talking. So there's that too.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I figure with this one is I honestly never thought that I would be doing a podcast like a year or two ago, but I started doing it with a friend and I'm like, you know what, like I enjoy this and there is maybe the potential to make money down the road, but as long as I enjoy it, talking to random people like you, and most of the people I've had on are really nice people and they're knowledgeable about their subjects and I learn from it, so why not? But going back to the fighting situation, I think I've only been in one main situation that was, I've probably been more than one, but one that I can remember that was really bad. I used to be in a band. This was like 20 years ago or more. And I was in a band and we were playing this party and these skinheads showed up and they started, at first they just started like moshing and kind of like hitting people down while we were playing the music. Yeah. And then it went from like kind of moshing and kind of having fun. They started shoving people and literally punching people. And to be honest with you, at the time, I think I was in high school. I didn't know what to do. A couple of my friends did get involved and like were fighting. I think that I just didn't do much of anything. But in a situation, like if you find yourself in a situation like now, I might do more because I'm a bigger guy, you know, but back then I was smaller. But like if you find yourself in a situation like that where a fight just breaks out and it's like you can't really leave. I mean, one, you probably shouldn't leave. You should probably try and tame it down. But yeah, what would be some good advice, especially if you don't even really know how to fight or anything? Just try to stop people. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, call the cops.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's going to depend on the different types of people. So let's say if you want to pay attention. One thing that we have the Cooper's color code. It's just levels of awareness. And that is just real quick rundown. It's 5 stages. It's white, which you're just completely in la la land. You're not paying attention to what's going on around you. It's basically everybody you see at Walmart looking at their phone all the time. Then you have yellow, and that's just a basic state of awareness where you're just paying attention. You have orange, where that's you notice a possible threat. So like in your situation, that would be when those dudes come in, you're going like, I don't know about these guys. So you start in your head, you should start kind of like developing a plan. You know, what do I do if they do this kind of thing? Red is that situation where they're going to start punching people and, you know, but it's that self-defense situation is now going on. So it could be verbal, it could be physical, but black is freeze. You hear fight, flight, or freeze, man. Freeze is where you'd never really want to be, because if you are, you know, completely frozen, you're no good to yourself or anybody else. And you're really just, you're a problem, honestly, to other people, or you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get taken away if it's a kid or something like that. So, you know, that's the basic thing. So looking at that, let's say they come in, you know, you're paying attention to the people that are out there and everything else. They come in. Now you have to develop a plan. Am I going to get out of there if something happens? Am I going to make sure that this person, you know, I'm going to make sure that I get out of there and I get this person on my way? Or are you somebody that, you know, has some training where you're going to be more of a, you know, help to security? Are you going to go down there and try to help? You know, a lot of times if you don't know, you said you were young, you didn't really know how to fight. It's best that you didn't go down there and get involved in that, because really then you're just adding to the numbers of whatever. And sometimes you can actually get in the way of people who do know what they're doing in that situation. So, you know, if you can, it's individuals. It's up to each individual. You know, what's going to be the best thing for you in your situation? You know, is your wife there? You need to get her out of there. Or I guess at the time, it's high school, your girlfriend, whatever. So, you know, you have to develop that plan. Your goal is to stay out of it if at all possible. But, you know, if they're, you know, beating on random people, man, I'm not going to stay out of it. You know, I'm going to jump in there and do something. So, but everybody has to make up their own minds there. But the thing is, if you are aware, then that gives you the ability to have a plan and follow your plan. It gives you a choice.
Yeah. So just kind of like always be aware of your surroundings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, and yeah, my brother-in-law and a couple other friends and family, I've got some plays in bands, and yeah, I get to hear stories about how sometimes some of those can get kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah. For what's funny is too is like we were like a Christian band, and we went to like a Christian high school. We were a Christian band, so
Oh
most of the
wow.
time, a lot of the time we were playing at churches and stuff. But every once in a while, we'd find ourselves at these like bars or crazy parties.
Yeah.
And yeah, another time, there was like a stabbing at, I guess, at the bar we were playing at. So my
Oh
dad
wow.
actually, at the time, my dad took me out. At that point, he was like, no more bars for you.
Yeah. I think I
Yeah,
can understand that.
yeah. But so what about guns? Are you like it sounds like you work with guns too, right? What are your thoughts on guns and stuff?
I think that basically if you are responsible and are familiar enough and trained enough to use a gun in self-defense, then it is a force multiplier tool that is a good tool. Um, there are people I teach concealed carry classes. I can tell you right now, there are people who come through that probably should never carry a gun, you know, and it's just that they don't either have the right attitude or they just don't have the right training, you know. They need to be trained more. People don't understand that shooting is a skill that is it takes time to learn. And so many people think that if I just point the gun in the general direction and pull the trigger and it's all good, and it just doesn't work that way. uh, I had a guy, and he told me, he said, you know, he grew up shooting, he did all this stuff, and he come to take a class from me because he wanted to be an instructor, but he had to take a particular accredited class that I was teaching in order to be an instructor. And he comes in, so I start letting, as we were teaching the basic class and going over everything, then we go out to the range, and he was very confident in in his shooting. We get out there, and he starts putting shots on paper, and we're talking about like I don't remember if it was, I think it was like a 3-inch circle target from 10 feet away. He couldn't hit it. He was actually missing the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And he just looked at me in the middle of this whole thing, goes, man, I suck. You know, I thought I was really good, but I suck. And yeah, I think until people actually really, really shoot and learn, it's not something that is just, it's not easy. It's not intuitive, you know. It's something you actually have to learn. It's a skill.
Yeah, and in North Carolina, is it kind of like is it pretty loose gun laws or?
Uh, Not well. We still have, you have to take a class in order to carry concealed. I know there is I don't know, there's like right around 20 states in the United States that you don't have to take a class to carry concealed. But in North Carolina, you have to take a class, and you have to pass, you know, both a written test and a shooting test. So, you know, I don't know that I would say it's like loose gun laws, but you know, it's not really tight like something like New York or California would be.
Yeah, I'm in California, so I think it's
Okay.
tighter here. But yeah,
Yeah.
and do you have a concealed carry license?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and how many guns do you have?
Uh, a few. I'm an instructor, so I have more than I would have. Before I was an instructor, I did not have, but I mean, just a couple rifles and a couple shotguns and a couple pistols. Now the collection has grown because they tell you as an instructor, oh, you have to have an example of this type of gun. You have to have an example of this type of gun. I don't have like don't get me wrong, I don't have like an armory. I just don't have a particular, I'm not sure. I haven't counted them.
Yeah, yeah. And so, do you hunt too with the guns, or the
I do.
rifles, or shotgun, whatever you use to hunt with?
I'm not a hunter.
No.
And I'm not against hunting by no means. It's cool, you know, if you I'm all for it if you're gonna eat it. But like and this is where a lot of people kind of like look at me and think I'm an oxymoron, because I can't stand the thought of killing something. Um, I have conversations with students all the time, and I actually had one guy tell me, so I don't like the idea of, and he was taking a concealed carry class. He said, I don't like the way carrying a gun on you changes your attitude, and it kind of almost makes you want to use it. And I said, sir, I never want to use it. I don't want to hurt another person. um I don't want to kill an animal. I don't want to go kill a person. I don't want to hurt a person. And I know that sounds funny because I was a fighter. I jumped into a cage and fought with guys, but that was a sport. I never had any kind of anger toward that person. That's just a sport, and I'm a super competitive person, and fighting was just something I was good at. But then again, I mean, there again, I do eat deer meat. I like deer meat, and I'm thankful for those that do hunt.
Yeah, are there a lot of hunter types around where you live in South Carolina?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good places to go hunt too.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never been in North Carolina. So yeah. So if I wanted to go, because I don't own any guns, but if I wanted to go get into guns and buy some guns, what would your recommendation for me or anyone else who just knows nothing about guns, essentially?
So I guess the first thing would be like, what would be your purpose? If you was to get one, are you going to thinking like home defense or personal defense that you would carry, or just like fun getting out and shooting just for the fun of it? That's going to make a big difference.
Let's just say I wanted to get into, I would say hunting, but I don't know if it's better for you to answer like the self-defense thing. You can go that way.
Either way.
Let's just do both. Let's just do hunting, and then we'll do like home self-defense.
Okay.
Because honestly, I know nothing about what I would even use like for either situation. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want something that's kind of like a dual purpose thing, you could get something like a shotgun, like a pump shotgun or a semi-automatic shotgun or something along those lines. You can use something like that for both home defense and for like hunting certain things. If you want a rifle to hunt with, then you're looking at something like maybe a 30-06 or something along those lines. It's got a good scope, but again, that's outside of my area of expertise. So something like a good quality, something that maybe wouldn't cost a tremendous amount, like a Mossberg 500 pump shotgun. I'm a big fan of that one. I have one of those. And then I could take that out and go hunt with it if I wanted to, or it's a good home defense kind of gun if you want it to be as well.
Okay. And have you ever been in a situation where you had to like kind of like draw your gun on someone or use it at all?
No. Again, I carry my gun daily basically, but no, I have, like I said, my whole goal is to avoid a situation. I carry the gun for the absolute worst possible scenario. Unfortunately, we have these active shooters and stuff like that. So, I have a gun for the absolute worst possible scenario, but I guarantee you, number one, I'm going to do my best to talk a situation down, to calm down and get out of a situation before I do anything. Definitely before I draw a gun on someone.
Yeah. I mean, the one reason I use for not having a gun is just because I wouldn't want to shoot someone. But then there always is the situation where, when you need it, you wish you had it, and it's like someone like you is the perfect person to, own a gun and teach people about using guns because you're not using it. You know what I mean? The whole goal is for you is to not actually want to shoot someone, but to have it in case you need it. Yeah. So is there anything else that I didn't cover? Because once again, this is kind of like a new topic for me. I don't really have a whole bunch to add to it. If there's anything else that I missed that you want to go over, feel free to go over it now.
I mean, we could talk about, a little bit of personal defense. We could talk about a little bit of home defense. We've been, kind of loosely had a series lately on our podcast about home defense. So that's something that's kind of, that I've been talking about lately, but we could do personal defense. We could get into the awareness stuff a little more, whatever you want to do.
Okay. Yeah. Like home defense. Let's just say I live in an area that's kind of, a sketchy area maybe, and I need to protect me and my girlfriend. And I, once again, don't have a gun, don't have any knowledge on protecting my home. What would you recommend for one, would you recommend one of those like safety, what do they call them, like ADP or whatever, like the cameras and all that?
So what's really cool is if you just go online and order, I tell this every time I teach a home defense class, whether you have a security system or not, go online and buy some of the stickers. Like, I mean, this is the first thing I did. We actually had a rash of break-ins in the area that I lived in at one point in time. And, you know, it doesn't matter, honestly, if you are living in an upscale place or, you know, anywhere can be a victim of some type of home, you know, invasion or home, you know, or break-in or anything along those lines. We'd had a rash of break-ins in our area. And the very first thing I did was I went online. I think I went on eBay and I bought like some ADT stickers. I don't know how they'll feel about that, but I bought some of their stickers and a sign, and I put them on my front door and my back door, and I put the sign out front of the house. And because at the time I couldn't afford to go put a security system in the house and different things like that. Well, during all this rash of break-ins, my neighbor across the street had been broken into. A neighbor 2 houses down from me had been broken into, and then several others. We did that. And it wasn't probably a week after that, my wife and I pulled into our driveway one night and we saw very clearly where somebody had pulled down into our driveway. And you don't get down to my house unless you're meaning to get down into my house the way my driveway is laid out. And they had pulled into our front yard and then left. It wasn't me. It wasn't, I asked, like, my parents lived nearby. It wasn't any of them. So I feel like just that sticker probably caused them to leave. Actually, statistics show that like 75% of the time, if somebody comes to your house with intentions of breaking in, just having a sign or a sticker on the door or something that says there is a security system, 75% of the time they just leave. They give up right then. The goal is just to make things as hard as possible on people and to make your house a harder target. So like stickers are simple, easy, super easy. Okay. Another thing I really like is doing motion detecting lights. So front door, back door, any sides. I have them on the corners of my house as well, where it's just a motion detector light that you can put in. And if people come walking up, the lights come on automatically. If they come walking near your front door, the front light, you know, the light your front door comes on. You know, these things just automatically come on. That will deter people because it lights things up. You know, people want, if they're going to break into a house, they want it to be really dark. You know, they want it to be hard to get into, or want it to be hard to be seen. The next thing is, and really simple stuff, and this is probably the easiest. If you go to your front door, back door, whatever, the screws in the strike plate are like a 1/2 inch long. So open the door. You have the strike plates for the deadbolt and the doorknob. Take the screws out. They're probably a 1/2 inch long. That's industry standard. What they call builder grade. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot, buy 3 or 4 inch wood screws. This is like a 50 cent to $2 fix that you can do on every door. And you go in there and you drill those 3 to 4 inch long wood screws in instead of those little 1/2 inch screws. What that does now is that drills all the way through into the frame of your house. Now, if somebody tries to kick your door in, they're now fighting against the entire frame of your house, not just the door frame. A lot of people are completely there. They have no idea. They think that, oh, I've got this big, heavy door, so therefore I'm protected. It has nothing to do with the strength of your door. What it is the strength of your door frame that's around your door. So most doors can be kicked in with one kick. Doesn't matter how strong your door is. I kick in, you know, right beside your doorknob, it splits the door frame, and then you're in the house. If you take those big long wood screws, drive them in, there's videos of this where people come up, they'll start trying to kick the door in, and after a few kicks, if they can't get in, they leave. Okay, so it's all about just like you giving one layer on top of another layer on top of another layer to make it harder for people to come into your house to begin with. That's just like really 3 simple little rules. But that last one, everybody should do that. I don't care. Just go out and change those wood screws, man. That's cheap and simple.
Yeah, and what about dogs too? Because I'm a delivery driver, and the last thing that I want to deal with is a dog when I go to
Yeah.
try and deliver an item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dogs. And even I actually was in one guy's class one time, and he was talking about some of that stuff, and he made the comment about, like, even if you don't have a dog, put up beware of dog sticker or a sign up, and then put signs out that it looks like you have a big dog, get a big dog bowl, stuff, and just kind of set it out there, especially if you're worried that somebody might try to break into your house or something.
Yeah, or I was gonna say one of those signs that says like, you know, we have guns here or whatever, you know what I mean? Or like,
I'm not quite as a fan of those, honestly,
yeah.
because it's kind of advertising to someone. And if you're not home, because a lot of break-ins actually happen when you're not at home. And if you're not home, that's basically advertising to the people who's breaking into your house that, hey, there are free guns here for you to steal. So I've never been a big fan of that. Somebody was talking about a sign that said trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again. I don't think that's a great idea it might be funny, but it's not a good idea for, especially number one, it tells the criminal, say, hey, we have guns in here for you to steal. But number two, I think that's illegal. That's going to show that maybe you didn't do everything you could to stop from shooting someone, so.
Yeah, for sure. And what about the eviction thing you mentioned? Or not eviction, sorry. I think it was kidnapping. I forgot what word you used.
Abductions.
Abductions. Have you dealt with any type of abductions? And then also, what are some advice you give either to parents or kids to make sure they don't get abducted,
Okay, so I'll tell you who's better at that than I am, and that is my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter. We actually have a TikTok. Now, I'll be honest with you, we haven't been active on it in a while, but if anybody has kids, and you're already on TikTok, go search out Impact Defense on TikTok. If you will scroll back, there are tons and tons of videos that my daughter is actually teaching kids things that we know that works for kids. Because it's the same thing. It's just like your house. You're trying to help your child be as hard of a target as possible. And if your child's a really hard target, criminals will give up on them. There's a video out there of a guy who tried to abduct a 11-year-old little girl. He had a knife in his hand, and she basically did one of the same techniques that we teach, trying to get away, and just put up a fight. And he left and jumped back in his van and drove away. So the big thing is teach your kids not to be an easy target. Like I said, I could sit here and talk about that, but the best thing to do is, if you have kids, go over to TikTok, look up Impact Defense, scroll down. You will see my daughter. She got kind of TikTok famous for a while to do that. She got like over 500,000 followers just teaching this. And it was really, really good until it just kind of became overwhelming. And we kind of backed off for a while. We've been talking about getting back on there. She's been fussing at me, wanting us to kind of get more information out about it. But there's a whole bunch of information on there.
that's TikTok's one thing where if you have like good information, like you and your daughter have, and you go on there and give the information out, people will follow you and all that. So yeah, that's a good way to get it out there.
YouTube, and I always said, if my 15-year-old daughter is going to get TikTok famous for something, I'm glad it was the fact she was teaching abduction prevention techniques.
Yeah, exactly. There's almost nothing more important than being able to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And what about somebody, let's just say I have like a friend who almost like more from like maybe like a psychological perspective, who is really just angry, or maybe I get angry, or what's a good way to kind of like calm yourself down, or either yourself or a friend, or anybody really who's just getting really angry. You kind of went over it before with the fighting in a bar or party or whatever, but in terms of like from a psychological perspective, what could you maybe tell your friend to calm him down if he's getting really angry?
Well, it really depends from situation to situation, and that's why training like that a lot of times is kind of it's super important. I think scenario type training really needs to be super important. We have had a lot of times where we have one person say, okay, you're going to get mad about something. Okay. And it's the other person's job to calm them down. And things get really creative. Probably the worst thing I saw in a seminar that we were teaching was this happened to be a married couple that was working together. And after this, I never let married couples work together. But anyway, they were sitting there and everything was going cool for a minute. And then all of a sudden he looked and goes, no, really, she really meant nothing to me. And at that point in time, I thought the woman was going to kill the dude. And it just went, and whoa, we got to stop that. But yeah, it's just really, it's just kind of coming up with different things. And it, like I said, it feels ridiculous, dude. It feels ridiculous, but like somebody gets mad and says you cut them off in a parking lot, and then you got to figure out in your head, okay, like how do I calm this situation down? How do I, talk them down and try to, calm the situation? Usually in a situation like that, it's like, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were waiting on that. I apologize. I will move your vehicle, or I'll move my vehicle for you. You can have the spot. Parking spot's not worth fighting over. The main thing is you have to keep yourself calm. And I tell everybody, if you think about, if you were in school, you remember everybody had a really boring teacher that just talked kind of like, just monotone all the time. And if you could talk like that, it's easier to calm people down. I'm like, every time I've been in a situation, man, I'm just like, I'm really calm and I'm just talking like this, as monotone as possible. And I'm just looking for that, trying to get them to calm down and just, everything.
Yeah, that's good advice, is the talking. Because like you said, if you've ever had someone who has that like real soft kind of like, slow monotone voice, like it automatically just kind of like relaxes you,
Yeah.
Like a therapist or something. So the last thing I wanted to go over, and then we could end it, is in terms of gun control, with all like the school shootings and all that kind of stuff, what is your advice for the country on getting, the gun issue in order? Like, because I mean, I'm totally fine with guns as long as the person's like you know what I mean, who isn't looking to actually use it. Do you have any advice, to the country to as of what we can do?
I feel like you're trying to get half the country to hate me one way or the other.
Oh no.
I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this question.
I mean, I think there's good ways, you know what I mean? I think that we can keep them legal. Personally, I'll just give my viewpoint. I think that it's fine if they're legalized, but I think we got to make it a little bit harder for certain people. Like you said, certain people we need to make it harder for them, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that, right?
We go back to some other issues though with that, because like, where do most criminals get their guns? So they don't just go into a gun store and just buy them legally. Most of them either purchase them illegally or they steal them. So just making it harder for someone to get a gun doesn't necessarily make it harder for the criminal to get their gun. And that's where there's so many complex problems with this question. And that's why, because, if it was as simple as 100%, we could say that we can stop the criminals, make it harder for the criminals to get the guns just by making it harder on everybody to get the guns, then that would be easier. But in most cases, the vast majority of cases, guns are either stolen or bought illegally in the first place. So really, if you just make it harder for people to buy guns, then the only people you're making it harder to buy guns for are the people that care about the laws. So I hate to say I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I don't know.
Yeah. And then
I don't know that you
that's
can.
the best answer.
Yeah, I don't know that you can actually put laws into, murder is already illegal, drugs are already illegal. I don't know you can just put laws into effect that just change this, to be honest with you. This is a mental issue that we have. There's some mental problems that are going on, and I think that's basically the main main problem there. Now, how do we address all of that? I don't know that either, but I just don't think that you can legislate active shooters out of existence. You know, if by somehow they were to go in, and I'm not saying that this wouldn't be better, but I'm just saying if by somehow they could make every single gun disappear in this nation tomorrow, there are still mass killings. We've had mass stabbings in other countries. We've had some mass stabbings here in America. We had that guy in Wisconsin that mowed all those people down with his vehicle. The worst mass killing, we have bombings. The worst mass killing in history was actually done with a vehicle over in Europe somewhere. So I mean, it's not, there is just no, I don't think that we can legislate the problem away.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can just make it. I don't know. Maybe we can just make it harder. You know what I mean? Like you said, you guys have at the very minimum have courses you have to take or whatever, tests or whatever. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it really is one of those situations where there's really no easy answer, and that goes for a lot of political issues.
Yeah,
and I don't have the answer, and neither do you. And like once again, I'm not like a gun guy, but I'm totally fine with somebody like you having a gun. You know what I mean, or somebody that I trust with a gun. Now, I don't want someone who I don't trust with a gun, but but like you said, they can still get those guns other ways. So yeah. So lastly, if you want, like, you can plug your podcast again, and then also if there's any other podcasts that that you like to listen to that talk about self-defense and movies and TV that you like to watch that talk about that, or just any podcast that you like, or movies and TV shows that you'd like to plug. And the reason I ask is just because I'm always looking for more podcasts and movies and TV shows to check out. So
gotcha. Yeah, there is. Oh, darn. I got my phone hooked up right now, being the camera. So, I'm a really big fan of No Fear, and that's KNOW Fear by Tony Blauer. His podcast is good. It's kind of sporadic. It doesn't come out really regularly, but I like that podcast. And then, like I said, I pick up the Joe Rogan podcast some. Jocko's podcast is good. If for men, there is The Art of Manliness. I think that one's a good one. And so is man, my mind just went blank. There's another Order of Man. That's another one I think is really good. These are some that I listen to. Man, I learned the other day, you're talking about movies and TV shows. I am so freaking stuck in the past with my TV shows that I watch anymore. My family sits down. We watch this. I don't know if you've ever seen it before or not. The show Psych. It was kind of like late 2000s, early teens.
Yeah, dude, I remember that. Yeah, we've
watched that show so many times. That's probably like the show we go back to all the time. I was telling somebody the other day, I don't even know what shows are out right now. I don't watch that much TV, and I'm a big fan of the Marvel movies and shows and all that kind of stuff. So I do watch some of those.
Okay, cool. What about some of the actors that are like self-defense guys, like Chuck Norris, or like, I know he's like more of an older one, but like
he is now.
Even like Steven Seagal or like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Are you into any of those types of guys?
Not a fan of Seagal.
Yeah, I've heard some bad things about him.
Yeah. Just as a martial artist, I'm just not a fan of Seagal. I'm not a fan of some of his other personal choices. I'm just not a fan. Chuck Norris, I've always liked him. In all honesty, recently Keanu Reeves and what he's done for the John Wick movies and training for all those, man, that's really neat to watch, because he puts so much time and effort into the physical side of training to do those movies. Training in jiu-jitsu and all this other stuff that he's doing is really neat. So yeah, you got to give him respect for learning how to do all that stuff. So the John Wick movies, dude, I'm a fan of those. So I actually haven't watched those yet, but I've heard
from everyone that they're good. So I want to
They are
check them
good.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Well, thanks for coming on, and let me know if you
Absolutely.
ever want to come back on and
Yeah, anytime.
keep fighting the good fight over there.
Yep. You mentioned it and I forgot to mention that. You can find us, we're pretty much Impact Defense on just about everything. We're Impact Defense on YouTube, Impact Defense podcast, Impact Defense on Instagram, Facebook. Pretty much Impact Defense everywhere.
All right, great. Sounds good. Thanks for coming on, Brian.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.